Gamblers being bombarded, the Gambling Commission has beefed up its rules on online VIP schemes, already resulting in a 90% reduction in these schemes, and it will now consult on making sure bonus offers are not being deployed in ways which only exacerbate harm. And that brings me to the third area, which is our regulator. We can all agree that we need a robust, data-savvy and proactive regulator which can stand up to the giant companies it regulates. So my department will make sure the Gambling Commission has the appropriate resources to support this work and deliver the commitments across the White Paper. No one should be denied an innocent flutter, but the public should not have to bear the cost of treatment when a punter becomes an addict. So one of the important changes it will introduce, and one backed by both campaigners and many in this House, will be a new statutory levy to turn the tables on problem gambling, one that sees gambling companies required to fund more groundbreaking research, education and treatment. The fourth element is about redressing the power imbalance between punters and gambling companies and the Gambling Commission to create a non-statutory ombudsman that gives customers a single point of contact. The fifth part is one that I know unites this whole House, which is doing more to protect children. Gambling is an adult activity, and it must remain an adult activity. That is a major reason why I applauded the decision taken by the Premier League to remove gambling sponsorships from their shirts. The fifth part is one that I know unites this whole House, which is doing more to protect children. Gambling is an adult activity, and it must remain an adult activity. That is a major reason why I applauded the decision taken by the Premier League to remove gambling sponsorships from their shirts fronts in coming seasons. And it's the same reason we are ensuring children can do no forms of gambling, either online or on widely accessible scratch cards. Finally, we know the current status quo disadvantages casinos, bingo halls and other traditional premises compared to their online equivalents. A number of assumptions which prevailed at the time of the 2005 Act now look increasingly outdated. So we plan to rebalance regulation and remove restrictions which disadvantage the land-based sector. Madam Deputy Speaker, almost every Member of Parliament will have met constituents whose lives have been blighted by gambling. Gambling harm, that is. The online world has transformed so many parts of life, and gambling is no exception. It is our responsibility to make sure our rules and regulations keep up with the real world, so we can protect the most vulnerable, whilst also allowing everyone else to enjoy gambling without harm. I look forward to working with every member of this House to bring forward our gambling rules into the digital age, and I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Minister Alex Davis-Jones.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I also thank the Secretary of State for this update and for advance sight of her statement. I too would like to pay tribute to all of those campaigners who have long been calling for better reform and regulation of the gambling industry. The Shadow Secretary of State had given her apologies for today long before we knew of this statement, so I'd like to let the House know that today. But Madam Deputy Speaker, what we all know to be true is that updated gambling regulation is long overdue. The last legislation on the statute books is from 2005, long before the huge rise and growth in online and mobile gambling opportunities. As a consequence, people now have the ability to gamble constantly and make huge losses in a very short space of time. I have met with many people whose lives and whose families' lives have been devastated by gambling harm. It is because of them that this House comes together cross-party to call for better regulation of gambling. Anyone can fall into gambling addiction, so we need a modernised, robust system which is fit for the future. From bingo to the races, some forms of gambling are, of course, a traditional British pastime. Around half of adults participate in some form of gambling, and the vast majority do so with enjoyment and in moderation. Indeed, as an example, bingo halls are an important part of sustaining our local communities, especially in coastal and rural towns. And let us be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, bingo halls and adult gaming centres and casinos are facing their own pressures in terms of skyrocketing energy bills and concerns about the sustainability of their business models in the face of significant online competition. It is therefore welcome that there is distinction in the announcement between bricks and mortar bingo halls and low-stake adult gaming centres with the dangers that are unique to the online world. But I must push the Secretary of State further here. Although we have waited a long time for this statement, it is very light in substance. So can she confirm exactly how land-based and online gambling forums will differ in terms of their levy contributions? This is an important point, and I urge the Minister to clarify, both for the industry and for the 110,000 people employed in the industry. What has the economic impact assessment been with regards to the Treasury for this announcement? The government has delayed this white paper many times. Everything they're announcing today was ready to go a year ago. 6 gambling ministers, 4 culture secretaries have all promised to publish this white paper imminently. That being said, Madam Deputy Speaker, we welcome many of the measures in the announcement, which are many of the things we've long been calling for, and it is a move in the right direction. She mentioned the Premier League's voluntary ban on gambling adverts on the front of shirts. However, this really is quite weak. The voluntary ban as it stands doesn't cover hoardings or even the sides or back of shirts. It also won't come into effect for 3 years. So in that time, what is to stop the Premier League from reverting on their voluntary ban once public attention is moved on? Will the Minister be pressing the Premier League to go further? I have some further questions about today's announcement which I must press. Firstly, as I said, we welcome the levy, but can she tell us exactly what this levy will be? In addition, Labour welcomes the new powers for the Gambling Commission, but the Minister must confirm if they will get extra resource to match this additional responsibility. The Gambling Commission have already been found by the NAO to have insufficient capacity to regulate the industry, and now they'll have further things to regulate. So is the Shadow Secretary confident they will have capacity for the expanded role they'll take on? In terms of affordability checks, we know that further sharing between gambling companies is badly needed, and I await details of the checks in the consultation. However, it is vital that affordability checks are set independently from the industry. So can the Secretary of State provide us reassurance on this? That brings me to my next point. The Minister makes reference to stake limits and safer by design mechanisms, which of course we welcome. But will they be based on how dangerous a product is? Who will decide that? It took years and the resignation of a Minister to get stake limits on fixed odds betting terminals. So can she reassure the House that these limits will have teeth and reduce harm from day one? Finally, it is clear that we need greater protections for children and under 18s. So will these measures cover stronger action on loot boxes and other in-game features that are proven to lead young people to be more likely to experience gambling, mental health, financial and problem gambling-related harms? Madam Deputy Speaker, Labour has been clear that we stand ready to work with the Government. We've been ready to stand for a long time to tackle problem and harmful gambling, and we have repeatedly called for updates and to this completely outdated legislation. The Government has a real opportunity here to do the right thing, to make positive, real-world change for the better. The Secretary of State must commit to getting these updates over the line in good time. The time for more and more consultation has been and gone. So can the Secretary of State confirm and commit to passing all of these necessary statutory instruments before the House rises over the summer? She must crack on and make good on these long overdue promises. I look forward to further clarification from the Minister over the points I have raised and to ultimately work together to tackle gambling at its root.
Secretary of State.
I thank the Shadow Minister for her comments, and the Shadow Secretary of State also made her apologies to me, so I'm very grateful for and understand the reasons for her absence. I'm pleased that she said that we need to update the rules, and this measure would have cross-party support. I very much look forward to working with the Shadow front bench on something that is so important. She mentioned the delay, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I would like to reiterate a number of things. One is, of course, the measures that we have taken over the past few years, which I mentioned in my speech, whether that's cutting stakes on fixed odds betting terminals, banning credit card gambling, reforming online VIP schemes, or introducing new limits to make online slots safer. She will know that I have been in post only 2.5 months. This has been a priority for me. I have brought it in, I would say, with some speed, and that speed and timeliness, I think she can be confident will continue to ensure that these measures make it forward into the necessary regulations. We're bringing many of these measures through by statutory instrument, which will speed up the process. And I very much look forward to the Shadow Bench cooperation to ensure that we can bring these forward, these measures, as soon as possible.
Damien Green.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I congratulate my right honourable friend for finally getting this white paper published, and I particularly welcome the introduction of the statutory levy, which she will know has got great support on all parts of the House. The most disturbing fact I've learned in preparing for the Select Committee's upcoming investigation into gambling is that at this moment there are something like 50,000 children who are problem gamblers in this country. That is a truly shocking figure. So could my right honourable friend expand more on the really essential measures in her proposals that will protect children from this terrible scourge?
My right honourable friend makes some very important points, and I think across this House we do want to ensure that we protect children, and that's why, in addition to measures that are already in place, ensuring, for example, targeting of advertising does not take place towards children, there are a number of measures, including the ban, the voluntary ban that's taking place on football shirts. But not just that. As I mentioned, we are ensuring that gambling is illegal when it deals with monetary gambling up until the age of 18. So we will be making it illegal for children to take part in scratch cards or slots that produce cash. And of course, the statutory levy that he raises is so important because it is through the statutory levy that we can continue to look at research on how gambling affects children and can take any necessary measures in due course.
SNP spokesperson John Nicholson.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I thank the Secretary of State for advanced sight of her statement. We have consistently encouraged and pressed the Government for action in this area, and as other honourable and right honourable members have said, a dozen ministers responsible for gambling have come and gone since change was first promised. Clearly, the 2005 Act is out of date and grows ever more relevant to modern gambling realities by the day. Those vulnerable to harm, especially children, are not well protected under the current legislation. My party, these benches, and I will approach this important discussion with constructive dialogue to support evidence-led legislation from the outset. Perhaps the Secretary of State can outline the precise role of the ombudsman, especially when it comes to protecting children, because I know members on all sides are deeply concerned with a huge rise in gambling amongst children. We will work constructively with the Government. We know that gambling destroys lives, and I'd like to pay tribute to so many charity workers and others who've pressed for these changes, and members across the House, on my benches in particular, the Honourable Member for Inverclyde, who's worked tirelessly on this. We will work constructively with the Government in assessing what the right way forward is that protects the vulnerable from harm. Thank you.
Well, I'm very grateful for that constructive approach. I very much look forward to working with him on the measures as they progress. He mentions the non-statutory ombudsman. That is an important measure to ensure that we redress the balance between punters who feel that their issues have not been addressed sufficiently and the companies involved. And that's why we're bringing forward a non-statutory ombudsman on which we will be consulting in due course.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful. Can I first of all say to my honourable friend I welcome what she has announced today. I particularly want to pay tribute to those on the all-party parliamentary group, the leadership of which the member for Inverclyde and for Swansea East, particularly a lady for Swansea East who has, with us, driven this like an unstoppable power and a force of nature, so I pay particular tribute to her. Can I just say that I welcome this, Madam Deputy Speaker, because this is at least a start. I think it's a positive start. I think most of the recommendations made by the all-party group are in here, and I welcome that as well. But there are a couple of areas. One is to recognise this is about online harms, and the most harm that's being caused is from the online companies. Physical betting shops, etc., are not part of that process, and I think, therefore, when she looks at those land-based areas, she'll recognise when it comes to the levy, the statutory levy, the majority of that should be borne by those who are doing online harm, and that is important. The second thing is on advertising and children. I simply want to say to her, not far enough. I don't mean to be churlish about this, because I welcome it, but I do say this voluntary position by companies to have advertising off their shirts. Children, I'm a season ticket holder for Tottenham, they don't have a betting company in it, but many do, and children wear these things and they go to school sometimes in them, and they advertise, therefore, these gambling companies on their shirts. So we need to recognise this is a permanent process. Even if they move it to the arms, the point that you made, it may, who knows, in 2 years they'll slowly creep from the arms to the front. So I would say, when you consult on this, come back with a decision that actually we need to take control of this. But I welcome this, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a step for security and safety and common sense, and that has to be welcomed by the House.
Well, I'd like to begin by commending my right honourable friend for all the work that he and others have done in this area. And it's because of the points that they have made in their tireless campaigning, along with those who have suffered harms themselves, and their families. It is the result of all that work that we are standing here today able to bring forward this white paper. He particularly mentions young people, and I share his concern. We must do more, which is why we are taking steps to make gambling illegal in so many other forms for people who are under 18. And I do welcome the Premier League's announcement in relation to front of shirts being banned because footballers are role models for our children. And we don't want to have young people going around advertising gambling on the front of their shirts. They like to wear their football shirts. So I welcome that voluntary move that's been taken by the Premier League, which I know me and predecessors have encouraged the Premier League to take. Of course, we will look carefully at evidence, and that comes forward with any with the funding from the statutory levy, and keep all these matters under review.
Kevin Brennan.
I thank Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for her statement, and just managed to get a copy of the white paper. It was widely reported that there might be restrictions on over 18s introduced as part of the white paper, but looking at the white paper, it appears that it's more a commitment to consult on asking gambling companies to think 25 rather than to think 21 when going about age verification. Given the real issue we're trying to deal with is children gambling, could you just explain what the thinking is behind that particular provision?
Well, the honourable member is right to point out that it is appropriate to also protect people who are over 18 and perhaps under 25. And when he manages to read the whole of the white paper, I hope he will see our proposals in relation to online slots, where there will be a consultation on a smaller amount of money that could be bet by young adults between 18 and 25.
Damien Collins.
Thank you. I congratulate the Secretary of State and the officials in her department on the work in producing this review. Does she agree? I agree with her that the Gambling Commission needs to be a data-savvy regulator. Can she confirm that they will be able to run independently the background affordability checks without causing friction in the system? But also importantly, I think the rules that run the gathering of data and the use of data to target advertising and to drive customers towards loot boxes, a lot of those industry rules were really written for the pre-smartphone world, and the Gambling Commission needs to make sure that vulnerable players are not being data profiled and targeted.
As always, my honourable friend makes some very important points, and I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to discuss these issues with him, given his expertise and knowledge in this area. He mentioned the player protection checks. Those will largely be background checks that will be seamless and frictionless checks that will take place, only affect 20% of people, and most of them will not know that anything is taking place, but are really important to ensure that gambling companies take their responsibilities seriously to check what is happening, as I said, in secret. He also mentions loot boxes. He will know that the government is working with companies and pressing them to ensure that there are protections there as well.
Carolyn Harris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As Chair of the Gambling-Related Harm APPG, I welcome this long overdue white paper. In the APPG's 2019 interim report, we asked for affordability checks, parity with land and online stakes, an independent ombudsman, a curb on advertising, and most importantly, a statutory levy. Job done. The APPG also pushed against strong backlash from the industry, for all of the reforms that the Secretary of State mentioned earlier, not least FOBTs, measures on VIPs and credit cards. But today is progress. It may have taken 8 years of campaigning, 9 culture secretaries and 10 changes in hair colour, but it's progress nonetheless. Today is a momentous occasion that many thought and many wished would never happen. But now the commitments need to be fulfilled. We don't need more consultation. We've had 2.5 years since the review. Yeah. We need swift action, immediate implementation of the proposals and urgent legislative change where it is necessary. After 18 years of the gambling industry's dominance over this agenda, now is the time for levelling up. So I ask the Secretary of State, will she commit today to ensuring that these changes are brought in as a priority with no delay in tactics? Let us protect those whose lives have been affected by gambling-related harm, and let's stop lining the pockets of an industry who have had it on their own way for far too long.
Well, I'd like to thank and hugely commend the Honourable Member for Swansea East for all her work. She has highlighted we have listened and taken action. And I really do commend her and thank her for her work. As I said, I've been in post for 2.5 months. I brought this legislation forward. She can be reassured that I will continue to ensure, together with my junior minister, that this action happens swiftly. She will know that following on from a white paper, there are various technical consultations that need to take place. We need to bring forward these measures largely through statutory instruments, and that is a process, but she has my utmost commitment to ensure that that is done as speedily as possible.
Philip Davis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I refer people to my entries in the Register of Members' Interests? Can I ask the Secretary of State how many regular punters she spoke to before bringing forward these proposals, particularly in relation to affordability checks at the rather bizarre and arbitrary figures of £1,000 a day or £2,000 over 90 days, which I think amounts to £22 a day by my reckoning. The Conservative Party used to believe in individual freedom and individual responsibility, but that seems to have gone out of the window with these affordability check proposals. Can she tell me, when an affordability check is made, who decides whether or not an individual can afford the amount that they're gambling? Will it be the government? Will it be the Gambling Commission? Will it be the bookmakers? Or will it be the banks? And do the punters themselves get any say at all over how they can afford to spend their own hard-earned money?
I thank my honourable friend and for his engagement on this issue, and I know that he, like many others, wants to ensure that people, punters who enjoy a bet, who enjoy a flutter, are not prevented from doing so. He asks what engagement we've had. 44% of adults gamble, and we've spoken to quite a lot of them. We've had 400 meetings on this issue to ensure that we take into account all perspectives. And this is about, the white paper that we're putting forward today is about balance. It's about ensuring that people can go about their business doing what they enjoy without restriction, but at the same time protecting those people that need protection. And those checks that he talks about, most people will not even know that they are happening. They will be frictionless. They'll happen behind the scenes. For 80% of people, they will nothing at all. For 20% of people, that will just be simply a check on whether you've been made bankrupt or whether you've got a county court judgment against you. You will not know that that check is taking place. Those sorts of checks take place in a whole variety of different instances, but they are there to ensure that in the very small percentage of cases where an operator needs to double check that somebody might be going down the wrong road, that those checks take place. Those, I should emphasise, those checks are already taking place. Gambling companies already have a responsibility to ensure protection of those that gamble with them. And what we're trying to do is to protect people like the nurse who spent £245,000 over a period of a few months when the gambling company knew that she had a salary of £30,000. Those are the sorts of instances that we want to stop with our proposals in the white paper.
Clive Efford.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome today's white paper, but can I just ask a question on the issue of the statutory levy, because it's all well and good imposing a statutory levy, and I welcome that. But how that money is used is vital, and it has to be independent of the industry. The researchers have to have access and free and open access to the data, and they have to be free to choose what research they undertake. And those in the gambling industry should not have any sway over what is researched and what is not.
Yeah.
Well, I can give the honourable member the assurances he wants that they will not have a say in what the money is spent on, and we will ensure that that money is spent appropriately.
Stephen Crabb.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the tone that the Minister is striking today, and tackling problem gambling and particularly protecting vulnerable people is, of course, essential. Does the Minister recognise that the gambling industry, whether it's to everyone's taste or not, does have a symbiotic relationship with grassroots sport in this country, and not just horse racing? So what steps is the Minister going to take to ensure that, with the regulation that she is rightly taking forward, we don't damage grassroots sport in this country?
Well, I'm very grateful for the intervention of my right honourable friend, because he's made a really important point. We have a world-class industry that brings in, that has revenues of billions of pounds, who is putting money through its taxes to support many of our public services. And for the majority of people, it is offering something that they enjoy. So that is why we're trying to strike this balance between allowing that to continue whilst at the same time protecting problem gamblers. There are we estimate around 300,000 problem gamblers, and protect those at the same time.
Ronnie Cowan.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I welcome the statement. I haven't had time to read the 250 pages of the white paper, and I'm sure the devil is definitely going to be in the detail. I'm not as enamoured by the statement as other members seem to be. I'm delighted that our hard work has been recognised. I think it's really important today that we recognise the hard work of those campaigners, the people who have lived experience, the people who have lost loved ones, who have completed suicide through their addictions to gambling, and hard work they've done to bring me to this place and to allow me to express their opinion too. And the smart levy answer the smart levy question was going to be one of mine. I'm delighted here that industry are not going to have their fingers in that pie. That money must be ring-fenced and channelled through the NHS so it's used properly. I see one line in the statement says, working with industry and gambling commission. I would just caution there, they are part of the problem. And if we're going to work with them, you have to work with people who have experienced the gambling harm in the first place to get a balanced view on this. And I would echo the sentiments of the Honourable Member from Chingford and saying, if we're taking football adverts off the front of shirts for EPL teams voluntarily, that should be encased in law. What happens to kids who follow a championship team, or first division team, or second division team, or an SPL team in Scotland? Those children are still going to be exposed to those adverts, and yet we're acknowledging that they do harm. If the adverts do harm, they've all got to go, all shirts, all round the stadium, all around the pitch, in between games, on the television, on the radio. If advertising does harm,